Have you ever discovered that everything you believed about your life was a lie? That the most precious memories kept in your heart were just shadows of a truth hidden for decades? My name is Ruth. I am 79 years old, and that is exactly what happened to me on an ordinary Tuesday morning when I opened a yellowed letter that transformed every memory of my childhood into a puzzle that I would need to put back together, piece by piece. It was an October morning in Portland, Oregon. The Aigyo region's typical fog covered my small garden where the hydrangeas were already beginning to wilt, heralding the arrival of winter. I was sitting in my favorite armchair, the blue velvet one that my late husband Harold had given me on our 20th wedding anniversary. The coffee cup steamed on the small table beside me, and I absent-mindedly leafed through the day's mail. Electricity bills, supermarket advertisements, a postcard from my granddaughter Sarah, who was traveling along the East Coast. Nothing out of the ordinary. Until my trembling fingers touched a different envelope. Thick paper, yellowed with age, no return address. Just my name handwritten in shaky script. To Ruth Eleanor Morrison. My maiden name. It had been decades since anyone had called me that. Since I married Harold in 1966, I had been Ruth Pemberton. Morrison was a name I had left behind along with my youth in Iowa, along with the endless cornfields and scorching summers of my childhood. I carefully tore open the envelope, feeling my heart race without understanding why. Inside, a handwritten letter on even older paper, so fragile it felt like it could crumble between my fingers. And along with the letter, a faded but still legible black and white photograph. The photo showed a young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, holding a baby in her arms. She was standing in front of a wooden house I didn't recognize, but there was something in her eyes, in the way she held that child, that made my stomach churn. I turned the photo over. On the back, written in almost faded pencil, Margaret and Ruth, 1946. 1946, the year of my birth. But that woman wasn't my mother. My mother was Dorothy Morrison, and she had died when I was 15, taken by an aggressive cancer that consumed her in a matter of months. Or at least, that's what I always believed. With my hands trembling so much that I could barely hold the paper, I began to read the letter. Dear Ruth, if you are reading this, it means I have already left this world. My name is Margaret Flynn, and there is something you need to know. Something I have kept secret all these years. A burden I carried alone because I thought it was best for you. But now, at the end of my life, I realize that the truth, however painful, is your right. I am your biological mother. I stopped reading. I read the sentence again and again. The words danced on the page, refusing to make sense. I let the letter fall into my lap, unable to continue. My heart pounded in my chest so hard I thought I was going to have a heart attack right there. I got up, stumbling, and went to the kitchen. I needed water, air, something to anchor me to reality, because this couldn't be real. It couldn't. My mother was Dorothy. I remembered her. I remembered her lavender scent, the way she hummed while making apple pie, how she braided my hair every morning before school. But did I really remember? Or were these memories just fragments, distorted, pieces of a childhood that I had reconstructed over the years? I returned to the armchair, forcing myself to pick up the letter again. I needed to read it. I needed to know. I was 19 when I became pregnant with you in 1945. It was a different time, Ruth. A young, single, pregnant woman was seen as a disgrace, a scandal that could destroy not only my life, but that of my entire family. My father was the pastor of a Baptist church in a small town in Nebraska. The hypocrisy was suffocating. The same man who preached about forgiveness and compassion sent me away when my belly started to show. I remember Nebraska. I remember visiting my grandparents there when I was little. A cold, distant couple who barely looked at me. I always thought it was just their way, that typical rigidity of religious people from the Midwest. Now it all made sense in a torturous way. They sent me to a home for single mothers in Iowa. It was one of those institutions run by Catholic nuns, places where, girls like me were hidden away until they gave birth and gave their babies up for adoption. But I didn't want to give you up, Ruth. You have to believe that. In the 3 days I held you in my arms in the hospital, before they forced me to sign the papers, I loved you with every fiber of my being. Tears began to roll down my face, blurring my vision. I angrily wiped them away. I didn't want to cry. I wanted answers. Your adoptive mother, Dorothy Morrison, was my second cousin. She and her husband, Thomas, had been trying to have children for years without success. When they learned of my situation, they offered to adopt you. My family saw this as the perfect solution. The baby would stay in the family, even if secretly, and I could move on with my life as if nothing had happened. Dorothy was Margaret's cousin. That meant there was technically some blood tie between me and the woman I'd called mother for 15 years. But why had no one ever told me? Why keep this secret until after death? I signed the papers on a rainy afternoon in March of 1946. You were 3 days old. I agreed never to tell the truth, never to seek contact, to let Dorothy and Thomas raise you as if you were their biological daughter. And throughout all these years, I kept my word. I returned to Nebraska, finished my studies, married a good man named Robert Flynn, had 3 more children. I built a life. She had other children. I had siblings. Half-siblings, technically, but still, blood of my blood. People who shared half my DNA and whom I never met, never knew existed. But not a single day went by that I didn't think of you, Ruth. I moved to Portland on purpose, a few years after I learned that you had settled here after your marriage. I never approached you, never tried to make contact. I just watched you from afar. I saw you at your college graduation. I saw you get married. I saw you with your children in the park. I was a shadow in your life, an invisible presence carrying a love impossible to express. A chill ran down my spine. She was there. She'd been in Portland all this time. How many times had our paths crossed without me knowing? How many times had she seen me at the supermarket, on the street, at the doctor's office, and I simply walked past her without recognizing the woman who gave birth to me? Now I am old and sick. The cancer that is consuming me gives me the courage to finally do what I should have done a long time ago. I am not asking for forgiveness because I am not sure if I deserve it. I am not asking you to understand me because perhaps that is impossible. I am simply giving you the truth that you deserved to have had all along. The letter continued with a few more paragraphs, giving details about my biological father, a young soldier who had died in World War II before even knowing she was pregnant, about her other children, their names and addresses in case I wanted to get in touch, about how she watched me grow up and become the woman I am today. It ended with a simple sentence, devastating in its sincerity. You were the first and greatest love of my life. I'm so sorry I wasn't strong enough to fight for you. With all my love, Margaret. I sat there for hours, the letter in my lap, the photo in my hand, trying to reorganize 79 years of memories under this cruel new light of truth. Every memory of my childhood now seemed tainted, questionable. Was Dorothy's love for me real? Or was it just duty, an obligation to keep the family secret? And my father, Thomas, who died when I was 8 in a car accident, did he know the truth? Did you look at me and see your cousin's daughter, a constant reminder of forced charity? The following days were a whirlwind. I Googled Margaret Flynn's name and found her obituary. She had passed away 3 weeks earlier, at the age of 86, leaving behind 3 children, 8 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. There was a picture of her, a white-haired lady with the same clear eyes I saw in the mirror every day. My eyes. Her eyes. I called the phone number of one of her sons, my half-brother, a man named David Flynn. My voice trembled as I introduced myself. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and then he began to cry. He knew about me. They all knew. Mother had told them in her final days, preparing them for the possibility that I might get in touch. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop in downtown Portland. When I arrived, I recognized them immediately, 3 strangers who shared features of my face. David had my nose. Susan, the middle daughter, had my crooked smile, and the youngest, Michael, had the same crease between his eyebrows when he frowned. We sat uncomfortably at first, neither of us knowing exactly how to navigate this absurd situation. Then David pulled out a box. Inside were photos, dozens of them. Photos of me at various stages of my life, taken from afar. Me at my prom, wearing a turquoise dress I loved. Me pregnant with my first child, walking in the park. Harold and I dancing at our 25th wedding anniversary party in the garden. Margaret had documented my entire life. Like a silent detective, she collected pieces of me, crumbs of a daughter she had given up on, but never forgotten. We cried together, 4 brothers united by blood, but separated by the painful choices of an era that didn't understand compassion for women in impossible situations. They told me about her, about how kind but distant she was, how sometimes she would look out the window with a deep sadness in her eyes, especially in March, the month of my birthday. They said she made their father promise to take care of her children after she was gone, and to make sure I received the letter. That she had written and rewritten that letter a dozen times, trying to find the right words, knowing that there were no right words for such a revelation. In the following weeks, I began the process of deconstructing and reconstructing my identity. I visited Margaret's grave, brought flowers, and stood there not knowing what to say. Hello seemed ridiculous. Mother seemed impossible. In the end, I just said, "Thank you," aloud, hoping that somehow she could hear me. I spoke to my own daughters about the discovery. They were shocked, incredulous, and then furious on my behalf. How could they do this to me? How could they lie for so long? But I didn't feel anger. Perhaps I should have, but I didn't. I felt only a deep sadness for the woman who carried me, gave birth to me, and then had to watch me grow up as if I were a stranger. I began to understand Dorothy in a new way, too. She loved me, that much I know for sure now. Perhaps not in the way a biological mother loves, with that primal and unbreakable bond, but she raised me with affection, gave me a home, taught me values. She did the best she could within the limitations of a secret that wasn't her choice to create, but that she was forced to keep. And Margaret? Margaret loved from afar, a kind of torturous and silent love. She did what she thought was best for me at the time, even if it meant cutting her own heart. The 1940s were unforgiving to single pregnant women. There was no social support, no acceptance, only judgment and shame. She was a victim as much as I was. Today, a few months after receiving that letter that turned my life upside down, I'm beginning to make peace with my story. It's not easy. Some nights I wake up in the middle of the night, my mind spinning with unanswered questions. What if Margaret had been stronger? What if she had fought to keep me? How would my life have been different? But then I remember that I can't live in a world of what if. I can only live in the world that exists with the truth I now know. And that truth, however complicated and painful it may be, gives me something precious, a complete story. No more fragments and shadows, but a whole narrative with all its flaws and pain. I have a new family now. David, Susan, and Michael welcomed me with a generosity that brings tears to my eyes. We spend the holidays together now, sharing stories, filling in the gaps in our lives. My grandchildren have new cousins. There's a richness in this late connection, an appreciation for something we thought we'd never have. I also did something Margaret never could. I told my story openly. I wrote about it on a blog my granddaughter helped me create, and I shared it in support groups for people who discovered hidden adoptions later in life. I discovered I'm not alone. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of people who have gone through the same experience, whose identities were only revealed in old age. The weight of the secret that Margaret carried for 63 years was too heavy for one person alone. She died carrying decades of silent pain with her. But by giving me the truth in the end, she also gave me a gift, the chance to live my final years, knowing fully who I am and where I came from. 79 years of life, and only now, in the twilight of my existence, have I discovered the dawn of my story. Is it late? Perhaps. Is it painful? Absolutely. But it's real, and there is immense power in truth, no matter when it arrives. Now, when I look in the mirror, I don't just see Ruth Pemberton, Harold's wife, mother of 3, grandmother of 7. I see Ruth Eleanor Morrison, daughter of Margaret Flynn and a young soldier who died before. Meeting her, I see a story of complicated love, of impossible sacrifice, of women making difficult choices in even more difficult times. And I see hope. Hope that perhaps, for future generations, stories like mine will become increasingly rare. That young mothers will no longer be forced to choose between social shame and giving up their babies. That children will not grow up without knowing where they came from. That truth will always be valued above secrecy. Margaret watched over me from afar. For decades, a ghostly presence in my life. Now, even though she's gone, I feel I know her more intimately than would ever have been possible if she were alive. Through the words she left behind, through the stories my siblings tell, through the photos she so carefully preserved, she lives on in me. Do I forgive her? That's the question everyone asks. The truth is, I don't know if there's anything to forgive. She was young, scared, and forced to make an impossible choice by a cruel society. She gave me life and then gave me a family that could raise me when she couldn't. And in the end, she gave me the truth. Perhaps forgiveness isn't the right word. Perhaps it's understanding, empathy, acceptance that we are all imperfect, doing the best we can with the cards we've been dealt. My story is not unique, but it is mine. And by sharing it, I hope that other people who are going through similar revelations know that they are not alone. That it is possible to rebuild your identity even at 79 years old. That it is never too late for the truth, and that the human heart has an incredible capacity to expand, to accept new realities, to love even through pain. Margaret Flynn, my mother, my unknown acquaintance, my silent shadow, thank you. Thank you for giving me life. Thank you for giving me a family that loved me. And thank you for, in the end, giving me the truth. I hope that wherever you are, you have finally found peace, freed from the weight of the secret you carried for so long. And me? I'm still here, living each remaining day with a renewed appreciation for how complex and mysterious life can be. I have a story now, complete and complicated. And that, ultimately, is all any of us truly want. To know where we came from, to understand our journey, and to make peace with our own narrative before the final chapter is written. There's an epilogue to this story that I need to share. Something happened a few months after I met my brothers that completely transformed my understanding not only of Margaret, but of the legacy she left behind. David called me one afternoon in December, his voice heavy with an emotion I couldn't decipher. He had found something in Margaret's attic while organizing her belongings. A wooden box hidden behind old suitcases, locked with a small, rusty padlock. Inside the box, he found diaries. Dozens of them, beginning in 1945 and going up to a few weeks before her death. When we met to read the diaries together, I felt I was about to invade Margaret's deepest privacy. But she had left those diaries there. She hadn't destroyed them. Perhaps, deep down, she wanted them to be found, for her complete truth to be known. The first diary entry began like this. March 1945. I found out today that I'm pregnant. I feel like the world has collapsed on my shoulders. But also, hidden beneath the fear, there's a tiny spark of joy that I don't dare express aloud. In the following pages, she described every detail of the pregnancy. How she felt my first kick. How she talked to me when she was alone, promising me a better future than she could give. How she cried on the train that took her to Iowa, leaving everything she knew behind. And then, the entries about my birth. She is perfect. 10 fingers, 10 little toes, a tuft of dark hair, and eyes that seemed to see straight into my soul. I held her for 3 days, 3 days that need to last a lifetime. I memorized every inch of her face, the smell of her skin, the sound of her cry. Dorothy will come to get her tomorrow. How do I give her my heart and continue living? I had to stop reading. Tears blurred my vision so much that the words became blurry. David put his hand on my shoulder, and we cried together over the words of a woman who had suffered in silence for so long. But it was in later diaries that I discovered something extraordinary. Margaret didn't just observe me from afar. She acted. Silently, anonymously. She was present at crucial moments in my life in ways I never imagined. When I was 10 years old, my family went through financial difficulties. My father, Thomas, had lost his job, and we were about to lose our house. Suddenly, an anonymous benefactor appeared and paid off our debts. We always thought it was someone from the church, an act of Christian charity. It was Margaret. When I went to college, I received a scholarship from a private foundation that covered all my tuition. A foundation that I discovered through the diaries Margaret had created specifically for me, working extra jobs for years to accumulate the necessary money. When Harold and I bought our first house, a banking error resulted in a down payment we didn't have to pay. It wasn't an error. It was Margaret, working through connections she had carefully cultivated, ensuring my family had a home. She was there. In every difficult moment, in every financial obstacle, in every door that closed, she was there. Secretly, opening windows, being an invisible guardian angel I never knew I had. In her diaries, she wrote about the pain of not being able to be openly present, but also about the joy of being able to help, of being able to be a mother in a way that society allowed. From a distance, in secret, through anonymous acts of love. Today, I saw Ruth graduate from university, she wrote in June of 1967. She was radiant, full of life and possibilities. I sat in the last row, hidden among strangers, and my heart almost burst with pride. She doesn't know that half the tuition came from me, that I worked double shifts at the factory to ensure she could study without worries. And it's okay that she doesn't know. A mother's love doesn't need recognition. It just needs to exist. This revelation changed everything again. Margaret wasn't just a passive observer of my life. She was an active participant, shaping my path in ways I was only now beginning to understand. Every opportunity I thought I had achieved, on my own, every stroke of luck, every moment when things inexplicably worked out, she was there, behind the scenes, silently moving the pieces. And more than that, she did this not just for me. In her diaries, I discovered that she dedicated her entire life to helping single mothers. She volunteered at shelters, donated to organizations that supported women in situations similar to her own. She transformed her pain into purpose, her loss into a legacy. If I cannot be Ruth's mother in the way I want, she wrote in 1972, I can be the mother of all the Ruths in the world. I can ensure that other young women are not judged and abandoned as I was. I can fight for a world where no mother has to choose between her child and her dignity. Margaret Flynn wasn't just my biological mother. She was a silent force of love and change. And I, so focused on my own pain and confusion, almost missed that deeper truth. Today, I carry with me not only the weight of revelation, but also the lightness of gratitude. I am grateful for Dorothy, who raised me with love and gave me a happy childhood. I am grateful for Harold, who was by my side for 43 years before passing away. I am grateful for my daughters, my grandchildren, for the family I have built. But now I am also grateful for Margaret, for every secret sacrifice, for every anonymous act of love, for every tear she shed alone so that I could smile in public. She gave me life twice, once by giving birth to me, and again by giving me the means to live fully, even without knowing that she was the one opening the way. Margaret's legacy doesn't end with me. Inspired by her life, I established a foundation in her name, using part of the inheritance she unexpectedly left me. The Margaret Flynn Foundation supports young mothers, provides scholarships, and advocates for policies that protect women in vulnerable situations. It's my way of continuing the work she began, of transforming pain into hope. At 79, I learned that it's never too late to discover who we truly are. And I also learned that true love doesn't need stages or recognition. It exists in the shadows, in secret gestures, in sacrifices that no one sees. Margaret taught me this, even in her absence. Especially in her absence. If you've made it to the end of this story, thank you for listening, for giving me space to share this very personal part of my life. I ask that you like this video and subscribe to the channel, because stories like mine need to be told, need to be heard, and I'd love to know, what city are you watching from? Leave it in the comments. Maybe you have your own story to share or know someone who has gone through something similar. Let's create a community where truth and acceptance go hand in hand. Until next time.